Okay, welcome everybody back to the next episode of JourneyCast with Skillibrium. I'm your host, Rob Swymer. So excited to have Scott with us, Scott Shillington. Hey, Scott, how you doing today, man?
Doing fantastic, and thanks so much for the opportunity to be here today.
Of course, of course. You know, we bring in leaders and best in class experts, thought leaders all around the world to talk about all kinds of subjects when it comes to sales and sales leadership and go to market executives that need those little tidbits, those little
Sure.
things that they're looking for. So that's what we're going to do today. Well, I'm excited to collaborate with you, Scott, and can't wait to get started. So before we get going into the content, though, give the listeners an idea. Who's Scott? Who are you? What makes you tick? What's your why, man?
Sure. No, thanks so much. Awesome to get to join the podcast. A bit about myself. I had a 30-year career in technology sales, so I was extremely fortunate. Along the way, I got to work with amazing people at world-leading companies, and always given great opportunities. I always say that life's about experiences, and how do you engage in those experiences? That's kind of the richness to me of life. And I was very, very fortunate to get to engage in experiences I never thought when I first started my sales career. I ended at AMD. I did my last 7 years. I retired in May. And just to have the opportunity to work at AMD, obviously the leadership, starting with Lisa Su, is nothing but world class. It's once in a lifetime you get to work for a CEO like Lisa. So that was amazing opportunity. And now I'm spending my time as an operating advisor at a PE firm, and engaging in a lot of things that I always wanted to do, helping charities and other things around the city of Nashville, and enjoying myself. So yeah, I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What a great
Yeah.
intro. You're in Nash Vegas, and I love that
Yes.
place. And yeah, it's a great place. Yeah, and congratulations in retirement. I'm a fellow retiree as well, so it's nice to have another person giving back into the next
Yeah,
generation, right? Serving. Yeah, fantastic.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, look, today we wanted to dive into empowering the next generation of sellers. What you and I are really doing on a daily basis back and with training and coaching, and everybody's like, "Oh no, training and coaching. Oh no, training." And we've all got our own sort of I don't know, our slant on that and what we think about it through the years. You and I have put in some years together for sure in this business. And I know it's an important topic for you. You're very passionate about this because you've seen what happens when it's not done right, and you've seen how it's done right and really help companies. I want you to talk about sort of, where have you seen it gone wrong, and sort of what are the things that we need to do differently today as I love the word empower, by the way. I hate I get sales enablement and training, and I get that, but I always use the word empowerment. And I think you and I are aligned on that, and I think that's what it's all about. So give the audience a little sense for, what's your best in class? What's your thought leadership principle on this? Just
Yes,
to,
I think I think go back to question one around, where haven't I seen it done right? I think the piece on empowering salespeople is treating them as professionals and understanding that it's a career. It's not just a point in time where they're stopping in to sell something. Like, sales is a very, very hard job.
Mm.
And, you need to treat it as a profession if you want to excel at it. And when you see the CEO and the C-suite embrace the thinking around that we want to empower and train and develop our sales organization so they can deliver value back to the customer. When you see it not done right, it's a bunch of people in front of customers burning customer time, where they're not getting to solving customer problems. They're not adding value to customers. They're sitting there and they're treating the customers as their practice field. You know what I mean? And they're going out 3-4 times a week and practicing on their customers.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate. And that's what I think where we all don't want to be as sales professionals, and having our career kind of painted in that brush, right? And so for me, I really tried to dig in hard when I was at a company. And if it wasn't kind of treating the salespeople as professionals, I wanted to uplift that process and shine a light on it and say, hey, I think we could do more. And the more we engage and support our sales organization, it's just it's a better company, right? It creates better culture. It leads to better outcomes. And yeah, it starts with, if you can't get connections with the CEO and the leadership team of like how important the sales organization and the professional sales organization is, I think that's where it really goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I think we have a responsibility as a sales leader to, stand up and engage with the leadership team of a company and talk to them about this in a practical manner and what the outcomes are, right? And that's why, sales training is a big industry, but I think it has a hard time connecting with at a lot of leadership levels, because you think like, hey, lawyers professionally trained, doctors professionally trained, and then salesperson, oh, we need to hire some staff, right? Instead of like developing and promoting and engaging. So yeah, for those that are listening out there, I think they're probably the switched on ones that they get this, but if you can pass the message on, it's really making sure your executive staff understands how critical the development of all of that sales organization from marketing through sales is to achieve the outcomes you want.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So it's really a go-to-market strategy, and everybody it's sort of, we've heard as many cliches, right? I hear them every day on these calls, right? Yeah, it takes a village. I used to, when one of my companies, Splunk, that I worked at for a long time, and I used to call it the family. I'd say we really do need to embrace each other, and we need to go together in the same language, the same approach to the customer to serve. I call it the give versus get principle. And I think, where we fall short is when we just look at the science behind sales and the operational cadence behind sales and the excellence. And those are all things that are table stakes, and you wouldn't be hired as a salesperson if you didn't know how to do that stuff either. And what pisses me off is when, that's all they do for the training, and they don't really look at how do we engage, like you said, how do we engage with the customer and show value every second of the time we're in front of them, because we don't get a lot of time. We don't get a lot of face time. How do we engage with the customer and show value every second of the time we're in front of them, because we don't get a lot of time. We don't get a lot of face time. I mean, this crazy business we're in now. I mean, you get 30 seconds, you get a minute, you get 5 minutes. I've had how many meetings have you had where you've had a C-level executive come in and say, hey, I've got another meeting now. I can only give you 10 minutes. And you got to add massive value, not just value, but massive value in there. So how do you do this? Sort of what works? What do you see working out there to get the C-suite involved? So it's a top down, and it's another cliche, top down, but really what it is the way I look at it is it's a common language throughout the entire organization. How do we do that? What have you seen out there that's really working?
Yeah. So a couple pieces, and I'm glad you brought up the part around, the data and the dashboards. I think where potentially the industry kind of swung pretty hard during this kind of like, hey, optimization of CRM suites and all that other stuff is, I was mentoring a young salesperson he worked at a IT distribution firm, big world-class company. And I'd asked him, how many meetings has he been on with his manager this week? And the young person was like, I haven't. And I was like, well, what's your manager? Yeah. Like, what's your manager do all day? Well, he's got a lot of dashboards he's got to read and build and PowerPoint presentations. And I'm like, this is the starting point for me for a lot of engaging with CEOs is, hey, the thing happens in the reps, and it's out in front of the customer where it happens. And it also gets perfected in block training time. And your managers are best used if they're out in the rep field with the reps, not building PowerPoints to satisfy somebody up above them that wants to see some data that makes them feel good so they can go to a meeting and help themselves try to get out of that meeting without getting scarred, and well, I see that a lot. It's like, hey, I'm a C-suite, or I'm a VP. My job's to get out of that meeting without getting filleted, right? And so then they have a whole bunch of people doing busy work. And what happens is that we because we don't think of people as professionals, then we don't value their time. And if we're not invested in that time with them, then it's okay for us to ask everybody for 1,000 reports and look at 1,000,000 dashboards. So the paradigm shift has to be, get out of all this CRM dashboard reporting, get to a fewer really meaningful leading indicators that they change the outcome of your organization. And leading indicators for in training and empowerment is like, how many calls did your manager go out on with the salesperson this week? How many, presentations that, you make that were based on like actual facts and fundamentals that the customer shared with you in a discovery process?
Yeah.
And then what did you do on Friday afternoon? Like, did you guys host a training, right? Did you practice? Because, one of the analogies I tried to relate to a lot of executives that I worked with over the years, whether they're CEOs, COOs, et cetera, is the sports analogy, right? And I was like, how do I connect with this person? And I'm like, hey, like on a Sunday afternoon, like there's 80 golfers in that tournament and 40 of them get paid. The other 40 go home and I
Yeah.
mean, if they flew their private jet, they got to pay for that on their own. You know what I mean? Most of them are
Yeah.
driving their car
Yeah.
across the country pulling a trailer, right? And so you think like 20 million people are out playing golf, 40 get paid on Sunday. And of those, let's say there's, I don't know, 2,000, 5,000 professionals, they're practicing all week
All week.
just for a chance to try to make it. Yet our salespeople, and this is like this empowering and training, why it's so important. It's like, how much training time, how much practice are we actually curating and creating in space for them to actually do that so they have the skills to execute? It's like a CEO's like, why aren't my salespeople performing? I'm like, well, like, what have we done to train them? Like, how do we get that done? And so, um, for me, it came naturally, Rob, I started at great companies. I got to start at Xerox back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
World-class company, right? They sent
Yeah.
us to Leesburg, Virginia, and the managers were all world-class. It was just like a talent pool. The people you were in your branch, you're just looking around the table and you're like, wow, these are all phenomenal people. They're all invested in and trained.
Yeah.
Then I get to go to Parametric Technology, right? I mean, legendary company where you learn, and you have managers like Mark Cranny who carry a binder around with them on like how everything should work. And he's drilling you on this stuff, right? And you're like, wow, I really this is pro. So that was my like, hey, this is the way it's supposed to be played.
Yeah.
And I think very few young people coming into sales today get that experience anymore. And I think this is where the profession needs to get, magnified, where we have to continue to invest in salespeople at all levels and all stages of their career. It doesn't matter if you're early stage or late stage, still benefit from practice. Like Tiger Woods still has to practice.
Yeah.
And he has like 15, I don't know, like big titles, right? He wins all these like PGAs and all that stuff. I'm not even a golfer, but I know how much that guy has to work, right? So,
Yeah.
I'll pause there. I don't want to kind of keep drilling down on it, but when I see it done right, the summary on that is there's a recognition from the leadership team that to get the sales organization to perform at the highest level and being, adding value to customers and helping them solve their problems, it takes a lot of structure and a lot of training, and the management team has to buy into that. And the frontline manager is the most important resource.
Yeah, I agree. And I love the way you said, look, it's not all about the spreadsheets and the PowerPoint. That's part of the business, and it has to be there, especially if you're a public company. You've got shareholder value, stockholders to answer to. I used to get so much value out of windshield time with my team. It's windshield time, walking from the elevator to the meeting. We as leaders have to take advantage of all of those minutes that we have with the people under our charge. And that's not training, that's mentoring. That's not training, that's servant leadership. That's not training, that's being there for them as an individual, not just an employee, as a person. And that's the difference between, training and empowering. And if anybody can do training, you go online, you do your course, and you pass or you don't pass, and great, you've learned it. How do you apply it? How do you bring value to it? How do you make it your own? How do you make that human connection? Those are things you have to foster as a leader. You have to be in charge of that. And leaders do fall short on that a lot of times, where they're And it's not their fault, because above them, they're just hammering them for all of these presentations or all of these reports or all of these spreadsheets, or that within the CRM tool, do the forecast. You got a forecasting cadence all week. I mean, I lived it and breathed it for 42 years. I get it. But you've got to have time set aside so you can mentor and you can be a servant to the people under your charge. And that's the most important part of really getting people into the career of sales and having a career year. That's what it's all about. You're not going to have a career year because you happen to have a spreadsheet correct. You're going to have a career year because you made a human connection with your customer, and that you brought massive value to the customer because you knew the product and you knew why the product did what it did.
I meet enough people every day and every week and over my career. Most people are just very bad with their time. They just don't respect their own time.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, back at, when I started at Xerox, they had a mentoring like philosophy, right? And I remember reaching out to Mike Stemler, who was like the top guy in the branch, right? Had the public schools in the city, and always went to President's Club. The guy was amazing, right? And I can't thank Mike enough. I reached out to him, right? And I was like, because I was an athlete growing up. I always had coaches, and it was like, hey, I always recognized I was far from the best on any team I played on, right? But I was like, hey, I'd like to always watch and learn what the best on my team was always doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, how did they do that toe drag? How did they kind of do this particular move on the ice, or make this kind of saucer pass? How did they kind of perfect that, right? And so I looked around, and this Mike Stemler was killing it all the time. So I just walked up to him, and Mike was way older than I was, right? He's just a young guy. And I was like, Mike, I'd really like to learn from you. He's like, perfect. He goes, nobody ever asked me that. Come on over to my house. Starts having me over to his house, explaining to me how he does his organization, how he manages his time, how he engages with his customers. He takes me out on some calls, right? I'm like, wow, he doesn't even have to do this. And then I get promoted to, similar type territory he has. And then he encouraged me, right? Go out and do great work for your customers, but mentoring, right? And then it's like, I saw that, and then I just applied that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I what I would say to sellers and to managers and to leaders, even as I got promoted through my career, I always was phoning up people like, oh my God, I feel overwhelmed today. How could I get some help? Right. And it's just a constant mentoring, and where companies could do a lot more service for their employees across every aspect of the business is to really promote mentoring relationships, because they last a lifetime.
They do.
They just really create that culture you want. And when done well, you get this world-class culture. And so what I would say to people listening today is, if you don't have a mentor, right, find one and work on one. Even I had managers, I would say Paul Cooper at Dell, unbelievable mentor. I'll never forget. He was the first guy that really stopped us and had us think about strategy and, tactics and action items. And he just took the time at a sales level. He was a sales leader, and now he's a world-class guy, right? Paul's done lots of big things. And what I would say is, Paul really took time to stop and mentor every leader on his team, right? And give them skills, and he would assess what skills do you need and what do you have, and he just mentor you and work on that, right? And for me, you can't get enough. Like Phil Bryant at Dell in the US, when I moved down to the US, again, Phil was a mentor, right? And he was like, life's in 4 quadrants, Scott. There's, you have time, space, people, and resources. And how do you manage across these 4 quadrants? It's so impactful, right? But they take the time. So I think it's one thing for people to say, I don't have the time. Like Phil Bryant was he ran one of the largest businesses at Dell. I think he's kind of busy, you know what I mean? He could fill up a lot of his time.
Yeah.
But yet he made sure he took time to spend whether it was when he would book a travel trip with you, or he'd haul you into the office, book a one-on-one, but it's always finding time to do that. And then, late stages of my career, I was super lucky. I got to work for Darren Grasby at AMD. And again, one of these world-class humans. He would never do anything he would never ask you to do anything he wouldn't do himself.
Right.
And here you are as an executive at a big public company, and just by his leadership, you're like, okay. And so just kept reminding yourself of how important that is. So I'd recap that point, that people are they only in their mind are too busy. You have the power to create the space if you really care about your staff to mentor and train them, right? I think to your point where people are like, I'm feeling manic and busy. What I would say is stop, look at your calendar, start to block and create space. And if you don't have a mentor, get one. And if you're not mentoring, mentor somebody, right? And that's where I think the learning starts in empowerment.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. And one of the things I always tell people is to be an advocate for yourself. And that's what you did. You were an advocate for yourself. You went up to somebody and said, "Hey, I'd love to learn from you. I'd love to be coached by you."
Yeah.
And no one is unapproachable. No one, even the CEO. And
Yeah.
that's and you just nailed it, because there's so many people that they don't go up them because they think that they're just unapproachable. And the reality is, those are the people that are waiting for you to come up to them. Those are the people that want to give back, and they want to spread those lessons learned that over the years or where they are. So being an advocate for yourself is just one of the best things you can do. I used it in my career, and I had some really amazing experience because of that. Because I had that kind of confidence to just like you did, to walk up and say, "Hey, I'd love to learn from you." It's a wonderful thing. And as far as mentoring, I am a big advocate of mentoring. I believe you need multiple mentors, by the way. And I also I learned from one of my good friends, Marva Baylor, and she introduced me to the concept of reverse mentoring. So I have the younger generation, Gen Z, Gen X, and what I do is, I make sure I meet with mentors in that group to make sure that I'm on point and I'm on task. I mean, look, we're both retired. I'm in my mid 60s, and I still want to be relevant. I still want to make sure that I'm adding value. So mentors are many mentors, and they're multi-generational. I love that point, and I think that is really what separates training from empowerment. You can learn the course, you can learn the product, you can learn the process, you can learn the steps of from discovery to close. You can do all that, but if you don't have the right DNA to serve and to give versus get and to bring massive value to your customer, it doesn't really matter.
No, yeah, it's so true. I love that on the reverse mentor piece. I was out for lunch about a month and a half ago with a board member at one of the portfolio companies I support. And we were, and he's had a phenomenal career as a commercial executive. And we were talking about our kids, and he was explaining his son was like a real successful young salesperson. I'm like, well, could I meet him? And I mean, like, now I'm trying to meet this guy like once a month, because I'm like, how does it work now? What's the challenges you face? How do you go about solving these problems? And just to be so infused with like the young folks that are doing this today, that are really doing it great, is a treat, right? Because you get fired up. Like, I mean, I just love the business of sales, the profession of it, and staying connected to it really is so much fun. And one of the things we were talking about earlier, mentorship, and just having an opportunity to kind of work with great leaders.
Yeah.
That's where I would push a lot of folks, even late stages in their career, right? You got to still learn, and like the thing that really makes me sad when I'm like seeing salespeople is like people that are later stage in their sales career, and they're like, I've got all this figured out, like there's nothing new to learn. I'm like, man, are you kidding me? Like take a look at your rusty skills. We do this with one of my companies that I help and support on Friday afternoons, and we got it today, so I'm fired up about it. But we do cold call practice.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like nothing keeps you sharper,
Right.
than cold calling, and doing reaching out to companies and trying to connect. Like if you want to get back on the edge and feel alive, do some cold calls, right? And to see kind of like the broad spectrum of folks that sign up for this, little workshop we do. Like there's people new to their career, and there's later stage, and everybody gets just as much out of it if they really want to commit to getting vulnerable. You know what I mean? And I think that's the hard part in sales, is teaching people the vulnerability and, having these normal conversations. Cause it's like, they think they have to come in and like,
Own it.
throw up
Yeah.
and throw up in the meeting, right? Versus being a business person.
Yeah.
Like a sales professional is a business person more than almost anybody else across the company, because they have to go engage with the customer, but they have to do it from a business perspective. And there's like, people say multi-threaded selling. Absolutely, right? Like, multi-threaded processors, awesome. But the concept is you have to be, wear different hats. Sometimes you're talking to a marketing person, a finance person, where you can only cross those genres of kind of the or the columns inside a company if you're a true business person,
Right.
because there you're like trying to ingest what's happening in the different areas and then go work with them. So,
Right.
my coaching to people, if they're managers or sales leaders, if you're listening, make sure you kind of just turn up the business person dial, and reassure your salespeople that they have a seat. They should have a seat at the table, and they should feel comfortable
Well,
meeting with all these folks, right?
I
So,
agree. I agree. And
yeah.
many, many years ago, I would get my business card, right, and it would be a regional sales manager or a salesperson or a salesman, and I changed it every time. I changed it to business strategist, and that was my title. I came up with it, and that's how I would introduce myself. And sometimes I would get, well, what does that mean? Of course, you launch into what you just said. I am not here to sell. I'm here to learn how we can bring value to your company. And by the way, I don't know if we even know if we can yet, right? So let's have a discussion about what your challenges are. What are your board level initiatives? What what is your why? What goes on in this building that I need to know about, that and can I match that with some value from what I bring to the table? It's a mindset, and I had a mindset when I walked out of my car, and I got my briefcase and I gave my card. I was a business strategist, and it changed my whole persona. It changed my physiology. It changed what I focused on. It changed my language. And those are the three things that I study. I've studied the neuroscience behind that, as you know,
Yeah.
for decades. And you have to be focused on something different. You can't be focused on the deal. You got to be focused on the value. You got the language you use has to be that of serving, and how can I bring value? And boy, your physiology better be there. You better be present and mindful. That cell phone is in your briefcase. It's not on the table. You're building trust. You've got vulnerability as well, and you're serving the customer. So I love everything you said, and I think it's really important. And and the salesperson, whoever they are, or the go-to-market executive, they have that right and that ability to build that persona. That's who they are.
I think the challenge in our space, the piece that we have to keep pulling the thread on, is, as you're right? There's a lot of psychology in sales and sales management, even in just leadership, right? And it is like, you got to get that, whatever that cape is that you got to pull on as you walk out of the car, to get your mind right, and your habits, right? Because like as an athlete, I was fortunate to be a competitive athlete for lots and lots of years, and get to go do like awesome things by athletics. But there is a way you get ready for every race. Like you're running a marathon, or you're running an Ironman, or you're doing a Spartan race, or what have you. Like, just there's a cadence to get ready. And when you go into the gym every morning, there's a routine you have to follow to get ready. And you need to make those types of connections in sales. You have to get yourself mentally into the space. And what's interesting to me is when I meet with sales folks, I'll be like, "Oh, what's the last book you read?" It's like, I'm like, you have to be a voracious reader if you want. Like the top salespeople I always meet, and top business people, put sales aside because we're dealing with business people here, right? Because that's what we just said. We want to be a business person. Top business leaders are voracious readers. Most of the ones I meet, right? They're consuming content, and they're reading across like psychology, they're reading across sales, they're reading across biographies. They just are curious about the human experience, right? Because it's across the table where, we're working with that person. It's through curiosity that we actually are going to get to where we need to.
Yeah.
And, I would just say that, you should have books at the ready. You should be reading on a regular basis. That's a great way. And it makes you more interesting because, then you've got more things to talk about with your customer or other fellow business people that you're going to engage with. So I definitely think that this is a big part of the mentoring piece and the learning and development that needs to go on is we have to remind our folks that it's not just YouTube videos and Snapchat and all that other stuff. It's like, let's get back to like the basic stuff, picking up a good book and digging into our profession. There's tons of sales books that have been written, right? A lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
More than there's a lot at the side of the road. That's, there's good and there's bad.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it's part of your ongoing learning journey to just be consistently trying to consume content and get ahead, right? So
No, I
yeah.
agree. I agree. Every time I speak, it doesn't matter where I am. I say, be a student of your game, and that's, to me, that's a lifelong learner. That's being, demonstrating a growth mindset, which is, obviously being comfortable, being uncomfortable, learning new things, get out of your comfort zone, and that's where the learning is. We all know that. So being a lifelong learner is so important. And going back to what you just said, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people that have stopped, and I will never stop that until my last breath. I'm learning. I'm always learning. In the last decade, I've learned more than, the previous 40 years. It's like, it's crazy how much information's out there now. So I am a sponge like you, always learning, always getting better, always trying to. So I founded Peak State Performance for a reason. You want to be in peak state. And the way you're in peak state is to get ready, to practice, to be ready for that engagement. It's just like playing a sport or doing anything or speaking like I do or selling or doing anything you got to do. You don't just walk out of that car and walk in the meeting. You have got to get ready. And whatever that means to you, you get yourself in that peak state for life and business. And that's the most important thing you can do.
Oh, I love that. And, operating at a peak state, we're talking about a career year. For me, it's like getting to meet salespeople. I'm like, this is an honorable profession.
Yeah.
And you have to really it requires you to like constantly keep pushing yourself
Yeah.
and getting ready. Right. And I think the peak state, like having to me, it's the training that actually delivers that mindset, right? Like you're into the training on a daily basis. You may have a good or bad race day,
Yeah.
right? You may have a good or bad sales call. That's the reality, right?
Yeah.
But if you're constantly working your craft and investing in the things, you will have peak performance. Like you just cannot not have it, right? Because it's like associated with this whole piece that you're going to bring to the table. And, getting ready for your, pipeline review with your boss, it's like, I mean, that was, to me, the thing at PTC was like, you realized how critical to the company the forecast was. Like, it wasn't like, it's like everyone says pipeline solves all problems. I'm like, prospecting leads to pipeline. So like leading indicator says, are you doing the work? But the thing for me that I learned at PTC was you got to know your customer deals. Like if you're going to show something, if you're going to put it on your forecast, if you're saying I'm committing this deal, you got to know what's going on behind that deal. And the only way you do is if you're fully engaged with the customer. And the only way to be fully engaged with the customer is if you're active and doing the thing. And that's like being ready, always on this peak performance, right? Like it's like, why don't you know this stuff? And so, kudos to that mindset you've built and delivered to people around peak performance because it's so critical.
It is
I
very
can't say enough about it.
Yeah. Very, very critical. And it was funny because I've tried to count, thousands of forecast meetings, several thousand forecast meetings in my career, right? We've all done them, good and bad and everything in between, Scott. But, the funny thing is I used to I used to really pivot a lot on those forecast meetings and say to my salespeople or any go-to-market executive in the family, tell me the story of the deal. Tell me the story. And they would inevitably just sit back and go, what do you mean? I've got all these bullets I want to talk to you about. I've got all the science behind a deal. I've got this. I've checked this box. I've filled out this form. I've checked that box. I've greened this, and this one's yellow, and this one's red. I need you to do this. I go, I got all that. That's great. I can read that. Tell me the story of the deal. And I would learn so much from that. One, I would learn, like you said, are they fully engaged, right? Do they really know the story of why they're there in the first place? That's really what's going on here. And then I would also learn from the good ones that really knew what I was talking about, how just embedded they really are. And not just them, but their entire team around them, and I used to love listening to those stories. It was like, oh, this is so great, because then they got it. And then, I started doing that. And when I would go into new teams, I would start it, and, it would be bumpy. It would be very bumpy. But over a few periods of time, people would just get into they wanted to tell the story. Let me tell my story. It's a great thing.
Yeah. And you could tell the ones that were really prepared and engaged in it's an efficient story.
Yeah.
There's no storytelling. You know what I mean? We're not like meandering through the story. They get to like the point, because the customers told them the story.
Right.
Like the ones they're working with, they're like articulating to them, by us doing this, it resolves this from a money standpoint. It gives us this from an efficiency standpoint. It gives us this from a people standpoint. So they're able to articulate back to us what they've heard from their customer at the highest levels. And the customer's super fired up, because for them, they're like, could be a job on the line, could be a project launch, could be a new product introduction. And that's everything, right? And so you've now been able to, you tell the story in a very efficient way. You get to the high points. The ones that are really into the deal, the storytelling is one full of facts and it's pointed experiences. It's like, hey, I went and rode to the top of a mountain and I did all this training, right? And it's like, I can articulate back where it's like, hey, when the gradient hit this is exactly how I felt. Here's what my heart rate did. I was blowing up, like I did it. So I can actually articulate, I can tell you at mile 18 on the run at Ironman in Lake Placid, it was like the worst experience of my life. Like I'm blowing up. I'm like, this isn't me. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't even feel human right now. You feel what I mean? It's like, this isn't what I anticipated to be happening here.
Right.
Because I lived it, and I can get to the hot spot of it. And I think you're making such a great point. And this is, again, I come back to the sales leadership. If you're engaged and you're mentoring and you're coaching these people, they'll see from you that you want to get to the matter quickly and efficiently with them. And the way they do that is by being efficiently engaged with their customer. And that's where they get these career years, is because they've gone deep into a customer. They've built massive value and they've sold a large deal. You know what I mean? And they can do that consistently year on year on year. They're not just a one-hit wonder. And it's because they've applied their craft, right? And it's the accumulation of, I think, the items we've been talking about. But definitely, I love the storytelling piece, and I love when it's crisp.
Yeah.
Gets to the point.
Yeah.
And then, and then they can help their friends. They're like, hey, I think there's something you can do here. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and every story has the plot. It has the plot. It has the rise from from ashes in some cases. It has the villain, whether the competition or the person, the economic buyer that's not on your side. I mean, all these culminate to a real story, right? And it's got sales has all the components of an actual story. So why not tell it like that? And that's I think there's some really benefit, because as they're telling the story, they also will understand what's missing, what pages are blank in the book, and the light goes on, and then you see them go. So many times I'd see salespeople or anybody, they'd sit there and go, "Oh man, I don't know that. I need to find that out." And there we go. And this is learning. This is the learning, not the training. It's the learning, not the training. That's the key.
Yeah. I love it. And, when people do tell that story and they come up to that blank page, that's where they're like, actually, that's where I need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done all this. I need help finishing the book.
Yeah.
we're missing a critical chapter. I really could use some help here. Those are your best salespeople. They love to ask for help. You know, the ones that aren't the best are sitting there blowing through a pipeline or a forecast review, and they're like, yeah, no, don't need any help here. I'm fine, right? You're like, well, you're fine, but you've never hit your number, so you must not be fine. The best, great storytellers, but they know where to stop on the page, and they're like, you're right, Rob. We need to make that call together
Yeah.
because I haven't been able to crack that code, right? So
Yep.
it's so many positives.
I mean, look,
Yeah.
raise your hand, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Vulnerability also builds trust, and that's what we're all trying to do. We want a high trust culture. We want one that you can share, that you can say, I'm vulnerable. I don't know this, without persecution. This is all things that we need. It's all around servant leadership. So now, what should organizations do about this? How much should be structured versus unstructured? How much should be driven by the seller, and how much should be we got mandated training, we've got unstructured. How do you put it all together and make it work? What should organizations be doing? What's best in class that you've seen?
Yeah. So I unfortunately don't have a silver bullet for anybody here today, but I think best in class is starting with that frontline manager and making sure for them, they understand that the priority is to develop their sales organization and make that a big part of their training.
Yeah.
And for the frontline manager to have that support, their second and third line management have to be equally committed to creating space for this type of engagement. And then I think if that's done and people see that, like, hey, it's not just turning out reports, but it's, we're hard coding in time, once a week into training, and that's led by the manager, and the manager is supported, and the second line leadership team is investing in that manager to make them really give them skills and tools to train. Super important, because we can't, it's just so big to go and solve. But I think the quickest path to success is your frontline managers are like the most important resource in a sales organization. And if you can get it right with your frontline managers and create the right mindset there, they will then invest in their people. Obviously I'm assuming that the frontline manager has the tools to coach.
Sure.
Putting that stuff aside, I think that's an important inspection point. A CEO could jump into the company. A CEO, he or she could actually inspect this by, going and meeting with a frontline sales manager and say, hey, show me your calendar. Let me take a look at what you got going on and see that, where's the training happening? Where's the time, space? When are you meeting with your team? I see you have a bunch of like pipeline calls and stuff with other managers, but I don't see time dedicated with your team. I don't see 10 meetings on your calendar where you're hip to hip with the salesperson out in the field riding along, right? Like, if we could just get that stuff right. And I think I hark back to that, mentorship mentality at the company. Like, is every salesperson paired up with someone inside or outside the company? And then, here's 3 or 4 books that we should base our training on and go from there, So I don't have a silver, but I can tell you what's worked where I've been, and where I've been where it's worked is our frontline management team was highly engaged in training and developing world-class salespeople. They felt it as their responsibility.
Yeah.
And they were held accountable to it. So
yeah, I agree. Before we go, I want to make sure we hit leadership as well from the C-level suite. What can they do to make sure that, they're empowering on the training and empowering side? How do they show up?
Yeah. Well, I think they show up it's not just at the sales kickoff once a year where the CEO strides across the stage. And although that's critical and we love to get our CEOs out to the annual kickoff, I think what they're doing is they are the economic buyer.
Yeah.
And they hold the purse strings.
Yeah.
And, I think it's them sending the signal to their sales organization that there is budget and space available for training on an ongoing basis. And it's not, we're not spending $5 billion on the sales kickoff and then we have nothing for what the people really need, which is, weekly training. You know what I mean? And we're not we do. Can the CEO look across their sales leadership to their CSO and say, are our customers the training ground or are we the training ground?
Yeah, I love that.
Because if the customers are the training ground, we failed.
Yeah.
But if we're the training ground, we're winning.
Right. This is perfect. I mean, this is a great way to start wrapping this up. Are the customers the training ground, or are we the training ground? I think that is so cool. Write that down. If you're listening, write that down. Are the customers the training ground? It's going into that customer in a peak state. It's going in ready to have everything you need to have to bring massive value to that customer, not just practice and figure out where it may be. And, the bumpy sales call, we all have them. But if we go in with the right mindset to give versus get, to serve that customer, then all those things have to happen before we go in. If we're going to actually serve our customer, we can't just go in and say, hey, what's going on here? You have to do the research. You have to know what's going on. You have to know a little bit about the company. You have to read the annual report, right? You have to do, the investor presentations. All those things have to be done up front. We know that. And all that information is available now. So I love that you said that. And you talked about podcast, books, and all that stuff. What are some of the what's your favorite podcast besides this one here, Ron?
Besides this, I would say that I bucket them into a few things, but having been a PTC alum, you're not going to go wrong with Revenue Builders.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's just good words of wisdom. I'm also I like mindset stuff. So Rich Roll is pretty cool. He's got like tons of really cool people he comes across. I mean, you can take the same thing for practice before you go execute. You can listen to an ultra marathoner on how do they try to think about the Leadville 100 for 12 months before they go and try and do that race, right? And they don't go practice on themselves in races. They get it done right. So I listen to a lot of that. I like Peter Attia. Again, I think it's data-based decision-making, right? So those are some of the, types. Again, I think being broad-based as a human leads to being an interesting and curious. And I like podcasts that help build my curiosity because that's our job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I agree. Great. I love that. And listeners are making sure they write down those podcasts. I think it's important. There's so much out there. There's so much content. Yeah. The key is to be a lifelong learner. Just bring it in. And if you don't like it, use it. Go to the next one. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, there's so much content, YouTube and podcasts, and it's not for lack of learning, right? You can find it. Be a student of your, yeah. So look, last question to wrap up. Any final advice for the listeners? Anything you want to put a wrapper around embracing this training and mentoring, and what should they do?
Last piece of advice. It's find a group of friends at work and make that your practice group. I'll tell you and I started that at Xerox where we just got a group of people together. We're like, hey, let's go make like 30 cold calls today. And we'd have to walk up and down the streets, knocking on doors.
Yeah.
And I took that away, and I always tried to find this small cohort of like-minded people wherever I was. Don't wait for the training. Because you could wait too long and miss the opportunity. Right. Go get some friends at work and develop your own curriculum and start doing it and show your boss like, hey, this is really good. Could we get some support for it? But find like-minded people wherever you are and do it with them. Train with the group. It's like getting ready for a marathon. More fun doing group runs than it is slugging a 24-mile run on your own. So go find some friends.
I love it. Mentorship, be an advocate for yourself. Proximity is power. We know that. Hang around with people that are better than you at a different level that you want to be at, right? And always play up, right? That's the key, right? But be a student of your game and find a mentor, find many mentors, multi-generational. I love that. So let's leave that. And thank you so much for your time, Scott. I know how valuable it is. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope everybody got some great little tidbits out of this, and they're writing them down, and they can apply them into their life and business. So, Scott, great to see you. Signing off now until the next one.
Okay. Bye-bye.